Hey everyone, I hope you're having a fantastic week so far. Today I really want to essentially put a ribbon around this whole idea of the consultant mindset, which I've described as the ability for someone to think strategically and apply problem solving skills in order to help an end client. And they may even use things like frameworks, processes, methodologies to help with this problem solving. Now, I've made it clear that with the consultant mindset, it's not just something that consultants or contractors use, but it's also something that employers or employees use, should I say. So with that in mind, the mindset is the established set of attitudes. But again, there is almost like an overall framework that you could apply to this sort of thinking. And so I want to talk about a framework that I came up with even before I started doing the whole consulting and contracting thing, that is actually in my fourth book, The Power of Goals, and talks about this specific type of approach. And I've called it the DAPIE Framework, DAPIE. So the first letter stands for diagnose. Now, when you're in the diagnosis stage, essentially what you're trying to do is establish what the problem is. That's what you're doing. And whilst you're doing this, essentially you're understanding strategically what the aims are. So maybe you're speaking to, I don't know, the head of department or the director or the executive to define specifically what that means. If this is a business, then you have to look at what that specifically means in terms of a strategy. And as I've mentioned before, strategy is broken down into analysis, planning, and implementation. So there has to be some level of analysis. Now, of course, when looking at a strategy, there are different things you can do depending where you are at. Number one, you can read policies, procedures, try to understand the asks from customers to define what that looks like. But two, you can use frameworks to break things down a bit more, do a bit of market research. So you may do things like the SWOT analysis, looking at strengths, weaknesses, opportunities, and threats. You may be looking at PESTLE. So this is looking at the politics or the economics or the social elements or the technological elements, the legal elements or the environmental elements. You could be using other sort of tools, other strategy tools that help you define, again, specifically what the strategy looks like. But above all of this stuff, strategy being the approach that you take in order to position yourselves uniquely for an end client, it's thinking about what problem are you solving? What problem are you solving? It's trying to understand that. So yes, look at documentation to try and understand stuff. What's related to that is then data. Look at what the data is saying. Is there any evidence in the market, within your systems, whatever it is that you're doing, that helps you understand specifically what the problem is? And it may even give you some clues in terms of how to solve this problem. So look for some neat data that has a good sample size so that you can go away and understand what to do next. The third thing is talking to people, talking to different types of stakeholders. Within the change management space, there's something known as CPIG. So that's customers, providers, influencers, and governors. So customers are the people that you're serving. Okay, so these are the people that are going to get the project deliverables at the end, or the benefits, or the product, or whatever it may be. Then you've also got providers. So those are the people who are doing the delivering. So project managers, change managers, program managers, business, all of those different types of people. The team that is set to, again, ensure that these deliverables are met. Then you have influencers, people who actually, again, have a way of making things happen based on their prestige, their status, what they know, etc., etc. Then you have governors. These are typically people who are senior or part of another organization, or maybe it's, I don't know, it's your mother, father, parent, whatever it may be, that have the funds and give you the go-ahead to do what you need to do. So speak to those different types of people to understand what the problem is from a holistic view. And you want to be able to understand the specific pains that they have and what gains they want to get. Okay, this is how you do the gap analysis. So maybe you do some sort of survey, maybe you ask some specific questions. So I've spoken about diagnosis, namely strategy, understanding what that is or what problem you want to solve. Number two, what data is out there that basically edifies that this is the problem. Number 3, speaking to people to understand what the problem is from their standpoint. Okay, you have to organize that information well. So the next part of DAPIE is A, which is assess. So you need to assess everything that you've basically gathered so that you can organize this information in such a way that it tells a story. It tells you a story of what needs to happen. Okay, so you need to be clear of the problem statement and all this kind of stuff there. Now, within the project space or program management space, this is where you start developing what is known as a project brief or project initiation document. Okay, there are some other stuff you can do beforehand, but these documents at least give clarity in terms of what it is that you need to do next. Okay, and of course people need to check it, review it, sign it off, approve, etc., etc. But it gives you a clear idea of what the purpose is, what the objectives are, what the deliverables need to be, what's inside and outside of scope, what are the milestones, who are the key stakeholders, what's the communication plan, or how do you communicate, what does the governance structure look like, what team is involved, what potential risks are there, what dependencies are there, what assumptions could there be, who needs to sign it off, etc., etc. There are all these things that come into play. It may not be called a project brief, it may not be a project initiation document, and it may not be a project charter. However, there will be some sort of document that you produce, whether this is for your business as a consultant, contractor, or a 9-to-5er, that will help bring all of this stuff together that needs to be checked by key stakeholders to say, yes, let's go ahead. So that gives you the setup for the planning. So that is the P of DAPIE. You start to plan. Now, a plan is essentially an intercalated set of tasks, okay, or steps that you need to take in order to hit different deliverables that have been outlined in your assess stage. Okay, so within this plan, you're going to have, again, tasks that may be aligned to deliverables or milestones. Okay, and the difference between the two are milestones are key stages that you reach, deliverables are outputs that you aim to have within a project. Okay, and so you'll have these different tasks, you'll have a nominated person who's aligned to these things. Maybe it's just you who's nominated to this stuff. Again, if you're within an organization, that may not be enough. And maybe the plan may highlight that actually you need more resources, okay? Maybe there are other people attached to these different plans. You will need to make sure that whatever you are planning, whether it's just for yourself or not, again, it needs to be checked by others. And why do I say this? Is so that you minimize any sort of opportunity for, again, distracting from the plan, should I say, based on issues that may arise. You're trying to minimize that. Yes, you're allowed to pivot and change and all that kind of stuff there, but you don't want to unnecessarily and inefficiently just change things just for changing things' sake because you didn't do the right planning beforehand. Now, of course, if you're a small individual, an SME, or somebody who's just trying to do something that isn't sort of like work related, then it doesn't need to be no heavy plan, but you need to have something. So of course, I've spoken about the tasks within the plan. I've spoken about who owns that different task. You may want to highlight budget associated with that, or maybe even status aligned to that, maybe even a comments area. Sometimes you can get quite meta with it, where you essentially have planned dates and actual dates that you've achieved and all this kind of stuff there. Whatever makes sense to you, the plan needs to be logical, okay? It needs to make sense based on all of the stuff that you've done before. So we've got the diagnose, we've got the assess, we've got the plan. The next element is implement. Now, of course, plan isn't just sort of like developing a set of tasks. You have to think about developing a way of capturing risks and issues. You need to have a way of knowing how you're going to communicate with your key stakeholders as you bring them through change. You need to be in a position where, again, you understand what the resource requirements are. Like I stated before, this is where you do work breakdown structures, all that kind of stuff there, etc., etc. Point being made is, once you've done all that stuff, you can start to implement. That is the I. And so implementation really comes down to doing the do, working against the plan, speaking to the right people, having the meetings. So you need to set up an environment where there is a cadence, there is a rhythm of meetings where you review things, you assess things, you monitor things, you check performance, you check standards. So maybe within an organization context, okay, within a program context, there are highlight reports that are produced on a weekly basis that essentially highlight what deliverables have been achieved, any comments against that, any key risks, etc., etc. Maybe it's a situation where you do a stand-up on a daily basis for 15 minutes at the beginning or end of the day. Maybe there are, show and tells at the end of your 2-week sprints. It doesn't matter what methodology you're using. The implement stage requires you to have some level of, again, monitoring, checking performance, managing risks and issues, all of that kind of stuff, making sure approvals are done. There are good sort of like controls and assurances in place, and there's good governance. All of this stuff is under the implement stuff. And you'll be in situations where maybe you're a contractor or a consultant, or you have the consultant mindset as an employee, and you'll have people who don't respect discipline, who don't respect methodology, who makes it seem like you're the crazy one when really you're not. This is the thing that they're lacking, and it's being exposed because you want to do a good job. Don't let people fool you. Continue doing what you're doing, because from a selfish standpoint, you want evidence that you've done things well, at least anyway. But of course, people need to sort of like jump on the bandwagon and ensure that their behavior is aligned to the approach that's been agreed before. Easier said than done. But anyway, let me not even sort of labor the point. So that's the implement sort of stage. And then finally, you have E for evaluate. You want to be in a situation where after a certain point, or maybe periodically, you evaluate precisely what's being done. Okay. So this evaluation may come in the form of a, lessons learned document, project closure report. It may be some sort of exception report, whatever it may be, something that highlights what has been done and does anything need to change, does anything need to iterate. Okay. Now the diagnose and assess has already been done already, but you may do sort of like micro versions of that stuff. You may diagnose in other elements where you talk to more people, you look at more data, you look at other strategies, etc., etc. You may sort of like iterate the plan slightly in the assess stage, or in the planning stage, should I say. The point being made is the evaluate part helps you understand, or is the gateway to defining whether you complete X project or X assignment or X operations, or you need to go back and make some changes. Okay. So the DAPIE framework is a way for you to, again, think strategically and use good problem solving to essentially solve your end clients or hiring manager or manager's challenge or problem that they're looking to solve. Hopefully that makes sense. So hopefully this gives you a bit of a framework that you can utilize. There are many frameworks out there that, again, the world of project management and consultancy, change management, etc., aim to solve when it comes to this stuff. But I personally like to use my own stuff because I feel like I own it. So if this is something that is useful, then yeah, go ahead and use it. Question for you. Let me know if this stuff is valuable. I love to get feedback, and let me know what sort of advice you would give for somebody who's trying to adopt the consultant mindset. So of course, if you want to see more videos centered around careers, life management, and all the different stuff that I've been talking about, don't forget to subscribe and hit the notification bell. And as always, my friends, understand, reach, and expand. Peace.